My son defended my cheating wife, demanded I pay for college, until a DNA test revealed the truth. Jack Herbert never aimed for a lavish life. From a young age, he valued simplicity, felt at ease with the basics. Growing up in a modest middle-class family taught him to focus on necessities rather than indulge in excess. This upbringing shaped his priorities, contentment, order, and living within his means. As Jack went through life, he often compromised his values, especially for his wife Jacqueline. She had more materialistic desires that clashed with Jack's simpler approach. Though he initially resisted, Jack frequently gave in to maintain peace. These compromises became a pattern in their marriage, leading to events that would later change Jack's life. He lived in a small unit, a 16x6 space that met his basic needs. A beige rug nearly covered the room, stopping short of the kitchen, where a decorative linoleum extended into the bathroom. Though cramped, it was enough for Jack, who had long since let go of wanting more. Jack didn't need the 3,200 feet house Jacqueline insisted on. He'd resisted at first. It was just the two of them, and their 16-year-old daughter Dedry, who was set to move out in 2 years for college. But Jack eventually gave in, and put down $52,500 as a 25% deposit. 2 years after Dedry left, Jacqueline announced, "We're estranged. It's not you, it's me. This will help us reconnect," as she took a 32-year-old lover. Jack was baffled by her reasoning, but for once, he didn't cave in. "You'll be left with nothing," she yelled, her usually beautiful face twisted in anger, as he told her he was moving out. "Fine. At least I won't be stuck with a wrinkled old cheater," he replied, finishing his packing. Miller's Electronics had sold him the surveillance equipment, and it wasn't hard to hide in the big house, since Jacqueline wasn't big on housekeeping or noticing details. Jack discovered her lover was a teacher at Baylor Lake High School. Brian taught English, and Jacqueline was the librarian. They planned to have their affair, with Brian returning to his wife and Jacqueline to Jack, but Jack wasn't careless. He'd become chief accountant at St. Elizabeth's Utilities because of his precision. As arranged, Brian and Jacqueline went to Sweet Peas for fried catfish, where they unexpectedly ran into Brian's parents. Nervously, Brian introduced Jacqueline as a coworker. "So where's Michelle?" his mother asked, sharply. "She's at home, with the kids," Brian stammered. "Yeah, she told us," his father said, unimpressed. "Said you had some kind of meeting at school today." Yeah, but we had a break, and decided to grab dinner," Brian replied, awkwardly. His parents responded, clearly skeptical. After an awkward meal, the couple headed to Foxtrot's lounge to dance. Jacqueline loved dancing, unlike Jack, who was clumsy on the floor. While there, they saw Jacqueline's mother and stepfather. "Your husband paid Roger a couple $100 to bring me here for dancing and drinks," her mother laughed, then glanced at Brian. "But what are you doing here?" "Well, Jack doesn't really like to dance," Jacqueline mumbled. "Come on, Monique, they're playing our song," Roger interrupted. "It's not our song, you old fool," Monique chuckled, letting him pull her back to the dance floor. Jacqueline was determined to keep her affair going, if only to prove to Jack that he couldn't ruin her night. Brian didn't mind. Dinner and dancing were just steps toward his goal. "Nice house," Brian said, impressed, as they arrived at South Shore Baylor Lake. "Thanks," Jacqueline replied, as they walked in. "Hi, Brian," Michelle said, sitting on the couch. What are you doing here?" Brian nearly yelled. "I thought I'd show your wife and daughters where you'll be living," Jack Herbert said, entering with a box. "Hi, Jacqueline, just pick up a few more things. I already told you," Michelle whispered, angrily. "After Stacy, I was done." She stood, slapped Brian, and stormed out. Jack smiled, and said, "Looks like you all have plenty to discuss." He added, "By the way, you owe Danny $12 for babysitting," pointing to the neighbor playing in the pool with the girls, then left. Jacqueline was desperate not to lose the house, the $177,000 in furniture, or her new Mercedes, which still had 3 years of payments. She begged Jack for forgiveness, knowing she couldn't manage on her salary alone. She nearly fainted when her lawyer told her she'd be responsible for half of Dedry's college costs. When Jack asked her mother, Monique, if she could move in, Monique laughed. Awkwardly, honey, it's a 2-bedroom apartment, Roger added. Monique sighed. Your father would be so disappointed. He once called Jack a snake in the grass, but he couldn't have been more wrong. Meanwhile, Jacqueline's oldest son, JJ, called Jack Dad. Mom wants to stay here. If you have a room, let her stay. Jack said, I just don't want trouble. JJ admitted, son, she raised you. If you have the space, give it to her, Jack replied. Love you, Dad, JJ said. Michelle Mallinson stayed true to her word. She never forgave Brian for his attempted affair. Unable to live on half his salary, Brian moved back in with his parents. At least this arrangement allowed his parents to spend more time with their granddaughters, Amelia and Amanda. When Michelle gave birth to Barry Mallinson, named after her father, they got to see him often too. Barry, I thought we were naming him after me, Brian complained. We were, Michelle snapped, but you made sure there's no we anymore. Jack initially saw his apartment as temporary, but soon realized he enjoyed the simpler lifestyle. No more mowing the lawn, raking leaves, or maintaining the pool. He didn't miss painting, replacing carpet, or cleaning out the garage. His closet neatly stored his suits, shirts, ties, shoes, and jackets, while a small set of drawers fit his jeans, socks, and shirts perfectly. Jack's furniture was minimal: a favorite chair, 2 bookshelves, a small table, 2 dining chairs, and a bed. He didn't own a TV, but figured he could watch shows on his computer if needed. When he wanted to watch the Saints, he'd head to Red Sports Bar, which had a 61-inch TV, cold beer, and great wings. He also learned to cook, something Jacqueline used to complain about, but with the alternative of endless frozen dinners, Jack improved his cooking skills. One evening, while driving home with a new recipe for baked chicken in mind, Jack noticed a colorful building he passed daily. For some reason, this time, he looked inside and saw couples dancing at Kay's dance school. As he watched through the window, a honking car jolted him back to reality. He pulled into the parking lot and continued watching as a smiling young woman demonstrated dance moves to the class. Though Jack couldn't hear the music, watching the dancers filled his mind with a melody. As the class ended, some couples chatted while others left. Jack made his decision and stepped out of his car. Hi, can I help you? The young instructor asked, with a smile, stepping away from an older couple. Yes, I'm not part of a couple, but you teach solo dancers, too, right? Watching them was so beautiful, Jack stammered, unsure why he was even there. Kai smiled warmly, taking his nervous hands. It's your lucky day, she said, confidently. Okay, Jack replied, still not feeling particularly lucky. Let's see what we can do, Kai said, leading him to the counter. Jack signed up for her 12-week program and scheduled his first class for Wednesday at 6 o'clock. I'll introduce you to your dance partner, she said, handing him his receipt. Well, maybe it is my lucky day, Jack smiled. That night, while preparing dinner, Jack couldn't stop humming the music he imagined as he watched the dancers. He thought back to how he'd met Jacqueline Adams at Cabrini High School. Her family had just moved from Stepping Stone, Louisiana, for her father's job at Baggett Mattress Factory. Jacqueline was attractive, but didn't stand out much among the other girls at Cabrini. Jack didn't stand out either. He wasn't handsome, rich, athletic, or artistic. He couldn't even dance, but he was smart. After being mostly overlooked at Cabrini, Jacqueline was thrilled when Jack quietly asked her to dinner at Shade Garden. Her father had dismissed Jack as a snake in the grass, but that only made her like him more. As the fall ball approached, Jacqueline eagerly awaited Jack's invitation. When he didn't ask, she finally confronted him. I can't dance, he confessed. So she ended up going with Joe Manzella instead. Suddenly, Jacqueline and Joe became a couple. Jack felt a bit disappointed, even hurt, but remained practical. They were 18, free to date whoever they wanted. In a few months, he'd be at the University of Southwest Louisiana, and Jacqueline would move on as well. They'd probably never see each other again, but Joe Manzella's smug attitude was starting to annoy Jack. Hey, Herbert, how's it going? Joe taunted. Fine, Manzella, how's Gina? Jack replied, referencing Joe's sister, who had a bad reputation. Joe, muscular but impulsive, swung at Jack, who dodged, causing Joe to punch a cinder block wall instead. Ow, that's got to hurt, Jack laughed, as Joe stared at his swollen hand. Jacqueline tried dating other guys to make Jack jealous, but eventually gave up. She missed both the winter and spring balls because Jack couldn't dance. But now, 29 years later, in apartment 2B, Jack was ready to learn. It was Wednesday, and Jack wore his burgundy shoes, a brown suit, a light blue shirt, and a matching tie. The shoes were his most comfortable. I thought it was Wednesday, Jill, an HR assistant, commented as Jack walked by. It is, Jack replied, but Wednesday is dark blue day, she teased, noting his usual attire. Not anymore, Jack smiled. Jack's unusual suit stirred conversation in the office. And leaving 20 minutes early caused even more of a stir. He headed to Tommy's Po' Boy, next to the dance school, and almost ordered his usual ham and cheese. No, let's go with a big shrimp, hot sauce, please, Jack decided. He enjoyed his sandwich, checked the time, and then entered the dance studio, feeling nervous among the couples. Great, you're here, Kai exclaimed, when she saw Jack. Meet Michelle Mallinson, your dance partner. The last time Jack saw Michelle, she was nearly 8 months pregnant. He remembered her as a pretty plump young woman with 2 adorable little girls. Her face had alternated between blotchy from tears and red with anger. Michelle stood 4 feet 11 inches and probably weighed around 170 pounds. Everything about her seemed round, her face, nose, eyes, and overall appearance. Hi, Bubbles, Jack said, without thinking, making Michelle burst into laughter. Why do you call me that? She asked, amused. I don't know, Jack admitted, blushing, as other couples glanced at them. It just popped into my head. He learned her parents had paid for 12 weeks of dance lessons to give her a break. At her first lesson, there weren't any male partners available, so she watched. That's when Kai texted Jack, asking him to join. By the end of the first class, Jack was sweating. He took off his jacket halfway through. And Michelle reached up to loosen his tie and unbutton his shirt collar. There, isn't that better? She asked, as they continued the box step. Relax, Jack, let the music guide you, Kai encouraged. After the lesson, Michelle held his hand. Will you come next week? I had so much fun, she said. Silly fun. Dancing with an old man, Jack joked, picking up his jacket. You're not old, she replied. I'm twice your age, he countered. Still, I'll be here, she smiled. Jack blushed, as he tried to meet her warm brown eyes. As she walked out, she turned back at the door and smiled at him again. Did you have fun? Kai asked. You know what, I did. I'm terrible at it, but had fun, Jack admitted. First, you're not terrible, you're just starting, Kai said, and second, dancing is fun, focus on that, and the rest will come. I couldn't have said it better, Jack agreed. The next morning, Jack reached for his Thursday suit, but decided to wear Wednesday's suit again instead. Now, I'm completely lost, Jill joked, as he walked by. Jack just smiled. His phone buzzed, and seeing it was JJ, he answered. Dad, do you have a minute? JJ asked, hesitantly. Is your mom driving you crazy? Jack guessed. Yeah, did you hear? The school let her go, JJ replied. No, she wasn't let go. Jack sighed. Yeah, and Brian dumped her too, JJ added. Wow, did she say why? Jack asked. No, she didn't want to talk about it, JJ said. A familiar phrase Jacqueline used when cornered. And with Shauna, the baby coming soon, JJ continued. Okay, I'll talk to her, Jack agreed. They met at Jade Gardens. Jack couldn't help but smile sadly. Jacqueline clearly thought it was a date. She wore heavy makeup and squeezed into a tight dress that looked unflattering. Now, a year ago, Jack might have been excited, but today, it seemed shabby. You look lovely, he said, taking his seat. Thank you. Is that a new suit? Jacqueline asked. Yeah, I realized I was predictable, So I donated all my old suits, and bought new ones, Jack smiled. Must be nice, Jacqueline muttered. Yes, it is, Jack replied, pleasantly. When the waitress came, Jack said, I know exactly what you're going to order, but I'll bet you can't guess mine. Jacqueline tried to recall, but couldn't. Ready to order, the waitress asked again. She'll have spring rolls, and sweet and sour pork, Jack said. That's right, Jacqueline confirmed. And I'll have iced tea, sweet and sour kung pao chicken, and fried rice, Jack added. So, how are you? Jacqueline asked. Good, works fine. I've got a little bachelor pad, just told you about my new suits. They've gotten pricier since we last bought them. Rhonda's pregnant, so I'll need to find a temp. How about you? The waitress poured Jack sweet tea as he listened to Jacqueline complain about losing her job, struggling to live with JJ and Shauna. And how Dedry still resented her. Penelope and Percy were at least kind, but neither had room for her, she concluded. Then get your own place. You're an adult. With what? My looks, Jacqueline snapped. I told you, I lost my job. Well, if your looks won't help, try using your charming personality, Jack said. Screw you, Jack, she retorted. Just eat, Jack replied. Every time I get this dish, it seems spicier than before. While they had ice cream, chocolate for her, and Neapolitan for him, Jacqueline brought up the idea of reconciliation. Not just no, but hell no, Jack said, smiling. Why not? She nearly shouted. So I can wait for you to tell me again that we've drifted apart. That it's not about me, it's about you needing fun, just fun, right? Will that make us stronger as a couple? Jack asked, eating his ice cream. Jacqueline considered throwing her ice cream at him, but held back. The waitress brought the bill, and Jack quickly paid, adding a 15% tip. Maybe it's the hormones, Jacqueline suggested. I'm getting older, my periods are irregular. And instead of talking to Dr. Peller about it, you had fun with another man, Jack replied, signing the bill. But he was so understanding, and you were always busy, she whined. Busy with the chaos you constantly created, busy driving our daughter around, Jack said, standing up. You know what, I haven't heard an apology. You've blamed hormones, me, and Brian, but not once have you said sorry. He waited. I am sorry, Jacqueline said, quickly. JJ and Shauna need that room for the baby, Jack said. Find yourself a small apartment, and there's a program at St. Elizabeth Courthouse to help you find a job. Use it. Later that evening, Jacqueline returned to JJ and Shauna's home. Her frustration boiled over, and she yelled at Shauna, calling her a witch. Damaging her relationship with the family. Thanks, Dad, JJ said, bitterly over the phone. Are you okay? Jack asked. No, JJ replied. I told her we needed the room for the baby. Anything she said, or did after that, is on her, Jack sighed. Jack caused a stir at St. Elizabeth Community Services on Friday when he showed up in khakis and a button-down shirt instead of his usual suit. The bigger surprise came the following Wednesday when Jack left at 5:10, wearing tight jeans, a blue shirt, and loafers, with his suit slung over his shoulder. Shocking his colleagues, and you're leaving 30 minutes early, Rhonda asked, astonished. Go, Jack, go. Jack Garrett from IT chanted, playfully. At Tommy's restaurant, Jack ordered fried oysters, but admitted that his usual ham and cheese was still his favorite. You never know until you try, he chuckled to himself. Michelle greeted him at dance class, smiling, as she stroked his arm. This looks much more comfortable than that suit. Hi, Bubbles, Jack smiled. You look good too, Michelle said, and she laughed at the nickname. Jack felt more relaxed and enjoyed the lesson. As it ended, Michelle mentioned heading back to her kids. Barry must be hungry, she said. Barry, oh, the little guy. Jack smiled. How are the kids? Millie's asking why we can't live with Daddy, and now Mandy is starting to copy her. But as long as Barry's diaper is dry, he's happy, Michelle admitted. See you next Wednesday, Bubbles, Jack grinned. I'll find a nickname for you, Michelle teased. Can't wait, Jack joked. Next, Percy called Jack, complaining about Jacqueline. Daddy, please do something. She's been here for 2 days, and Addison is about to lose it. What, am I an enforcer? Jack joked, when he called Jacqueline to tell her to leave Percy's apartment. she repeated the sentiment. I can't afford my own place, she muttered, Jack, and we sold the house. We each got $42,000. Where's that money? Jack asked. She dodged the question, and begged for reconciliation. Do you remember what you said, when I suggested going to the Catskills? Jack asked. You said, why bother? Well, Jacqueline, why bother now? Penelope had already made it clear, to her mother, that there was no space for her in her apartment. Besides, Mom, you hate dogs, Penelope added, as her two Irish wolfhounds, Samson and Delilah, whined for attention, reinforcing her point. As Jack passed Jill's desk, with his suit over his shoulder, she asked, where you going? Jack laughed. I don't ask you where you're going every time you leave, he teased. Yeah, but you don't smile like that every time either, she added, knowingly. Jack knew, if he told Jill, the entire office would know. By morning, everyone already knew about his divorce. With women comforting him, and calling Jacqueline a witch, while men either silently patted him on the back, or avoided him. Okay. But you can't tell anyone, Jack said, lowering his voice. I won't, Jill promised, though her guilty smile gave away her excitement. Every Wednesday, I make a few extra bucks, modeling for art classes, Jack whispered, with a wink. You what? Jill asked, shocked. Yeah, at the University of Louisiana, $100 to stand there undressed. The first time, I was so embarrassed, one girl joked. She ran out of red paint, trying to cover my blush, Jack joked. Jill burst into laughter, and Jack made it to his car. Before joining in, he was still chuckling when he arrived at Kay's dance school. What's so funny, Jackhammer? Michelle asked, grabbing his arm. Blushing, Jack retold the story, and they both laughed. I'd pay to draw you, Michelle teased, as Kai called the class to attention. So, Jackhammer, are you ready? Michelle teased again. Yeah, that's what all the ladies call me, Jack joked, making Michelle blush. That's not what I meant, she shrieked, playfully slapping his arm. Problems? Kai asked, with a smile. Yeah, she struck me, Jack joked. You should have heard him, Michelle said, grinning. I'll think of another nickname, Michelle promised, as they danced. Whatever you say, bub, Jack replied, spinning her around. Encouraged by Kai and the cheering couples, Jack and Michelle shared a smile, caught up in the moment. After the class ended, Jack nervously stammered, you want to? Michelle smiled, clearly enjoying Jack's awkwardness, which only made him more nervous. But he mustered up his courage. Want to grab a cup of coffee? He asked. I can't, I'm breastfeeding, Michelle said, with a quick shake of her head. Oh, right, didn't think of that, Jack replied, feeling foolish. How about a malt at Clark's? She suggested, taking his hand. That sounds great, Jack smiled, still blushing. We'll take your car, Michelle said. But when she saw his small smart car, she nudged him toward her minivan. I'm not squeezing into that thing, she joked. Jack protested lightly, but got into her minivan. Michelle texted her parents, to let them know, she was heading to Clark's. And confirmed, yes, it's a date, when her mom asked. At Clark's, Michelle's phone buzzed constantly, with family messages. Want to answer that? Jack asked. Nope, it's just my family, trying to drive me nuts, she sighed. Michelle ordered a chocolate malt, while Jack got a vanilla cone. They sat in the diner, enjoying the relaxed vibe. So, Jack Rabbit, why'd you start dancing? Michelle asked. Jack Rabbit, huh? Jack grinned. Yeah, my girlfriends call you that, she teased, then rolled her eyes. Never mind, she laughed, as her phone buzzed again. And stop staring at the girls in shorts, she teased. I was thinking how good you look in them, Jack replied. Before realizing what he'd said, before Michelle could respond, her brother, Officer Richard Vine, pulled up in a cruiser. Having trouble with your phone? Richard asked, smirking. No, just ignoring it. And you? Michelle shot back. Hi, Jack began, but Richard interrupted. Jonathan Arkell Herbert, Sr., I checked your car tags. Really, can't I get a malt, without you spying on me? Michelle groaned. Richard playfully pinched her nose. Not after Brian, he said, giving Jack a nod. I've let everyone know. Jack's okay, added, heading back to his cruiser. I hate you, Michelle yelled after him. Love you too. Bring him over on Sunday, Richard called, laughing as he drove off. Jack chuckled at the scene. "Sorry about all that," Michelle said, shaking her head. "What a weird first date, huh?" "Honestly, I think it's great," Jack said, making her smile. "And now I know what to call you. Arkle," Michelle teased. "Oh no, please don't," Jack blushed. "It's perfect." She laughed. Despite her phone buzzing a few more times, Michelle ignored it. As they finished their ice cream, when they arrived back at Kay's dance school, next to Jack's smart car, they continued chatting quietly, enjoying each other's company. Sensing Jack's growing nervousness, Michelle finally asked, "Archie, are you trying to kiss me?" "Yes," he admitted, shyly. She pulled him closer and kissed him. "Give me your number," she said, with a smile. "You're coming over for Sunday dinner. No excuses." 31 messages, she muttered, glancing at her phone. "Really?" Jack asked, surprised. After another kiss, Jack waved goodbye and drove off, leaving Michelle to deal with a flood of messages. The next morning at work, Whitney at the front desk blushed as Jack walked by. Other women in the office blushed, avoided his gaze, or giggled, while Garrett gave him a thumbs up. Jack finally remembered his joke with Jill and laughed out loud. "You didn't tell anyone, did you?" Jack asked Jill in the break room. "Of course not," she replied, though her guilty smile gave her away. Jack just shook his head, still in a great mood. Sunday arrived, and he dressed casually, in a Saints polo and khakis, for dinner at Michelle's parents'. Marie Vaughn greeted him warmly, and Barry Vaughn seemed to like Jack more with each visit. "Mr. AI, are we going swimming at your house again?" asked Millie, tugging at his hand. "I don't live there anymore," Jack explained, gently, but then remembered his apartment had a pool. "But my apartment has a pool, can we swim there?" Mandy asked, excitedly. "I don't mind," Jack said, glancing at Michelle. "Are you sure you want to see this body in a swimsuit?" Michelle teased. "Absolutely," Jack replied, making her laugh. During dinner, Jack felt increasingly charmed by Michelle's family. He enjoyed talking with Barry and Richard about sports, and felt welcomed by everyone, soaking in the warmth and ease that he had missed for so long. When the conversation shifted to football, Jack was in his comfort zone. "I usually watch Saints games at Red Sports Bar. They've got the hottest wings, you can't even feel your tongue after eating them." "Do they still have those wings?" Barry asked, intrigued. "Yeah, John," Richard said, in unison, sharing a laugh. Jack enjoyed the lively family dynamic. No one seemed to mind the age gap between him and Michelle, and he felt increasingly comfortable with her family. Dinner was a classic Southern meal: rice, gravy, stewed steak, and biscuits. Jack and Barry both reached for the last biscuit at the same time, leading to playful banter. "He's our guest, give him the biscuit," Marie ordered, tapping Barry's hand with a spoon. "But I need it," Barry joked, patting his belly. "I might waste away." "Go ahead, take it," Jack laughed. "No, you need it more," Barry smiled, sliding the biscuit to Jack. After dinner, Jack said goodbye to Michelle's family, with Millie and Mandy enthusiastically waving goodbye. Jack promised he'd see them soon. "Do I have to wait that long?" Michelle asked, smiling warmly. "We could go to side by side, and then foxtrots. We've practiced enough, haven't we?" Jack suggested, with a grin. "Side by side," Marie teased, raising her eyebrows. "Why don't you take me there?" Marie nudged Barry, playfully. "Because I'm cheap," Barry laughed, "and we're taking the van." "Yeah, I'm not getting in that tiny thing you call a car," Michelle teased, wrinkling her nose at Jack's smart car. "What are you talking about? It's a Mercedes-Benz," Jack joked. "It's not a Mercedes," Michelle smirked. "Yes, it is, made by Mercedes," Jack grinned. They hugged and kissed, taking their time, despite the amused glances from her family. Jack promised to pick her up at 6:30, leaving them both excited for what was next. The following evening, Jack was amazed at how easily he slipped back into the dialect from his younger years. His mother's parents barely spoke any English, mostly Cajun French. His father's parents spoke English with a thick accent, but would switch to Cajun French when upset. Family dinners were often a blend of English and Cajun French. Whenever Henry Jonathan Herbert and Eliza Cynthia Arno Herbert wanted to keep things secret from their kids. They would speak in Cajun French. Not realizing their 3 boys understood everything. By the time he was in high school and college, Jack had gradually lost his accent. As an administrator at St. Elizabeth's Community Services, he had tried to speak clearly, avoiding the Cajun lilt. It never fully left him, but after that dinner, he felt a nostalgic pull. Jack decided to take Michelle out for a romantic dinner the next night. He went online, found the number for Side by Side Steakhouse, and left a message, requesting a reservation for 2, at 6:45 the following evening. Not even a call from Jacqueline could ruin his mood. "Hey Jack, it's me," she purred on the phone. "Yeah, I see," Jack responded, keeping his tone neutral. Jacqueline used to mock his Cajun accent when his parents weren't around. She also made fun of their food, calling it unhealthy. "You know, fat isn't food," she'd say, with disgust. "So, how's it going?" she asked, in a sugary voice. "You know what? Yeah, good." Jack cut her off. Not giving her a chance to mess with his head, he grumbled to himself. "Well, I finally did it. I got myself a little apartment," Jacqueline announced. Acting like it was some great achievement. "That's nice to hear," Jack said. "Maybe you'd like to come over," Jacqueline suggested, laying on the fake charm. "I'll make the stuffed peppers you used to love." "Jacqueline, I don't think so," Jack said, bluntly. Jacqueline's false cheer quickly vanished, replaced by her usual self-pity. She started whining about how none of their kids wanted to talk to her anymore. "Even Dedry, my baby, abandoned me. Can you believe it?" she cried. "Well, I'm busy tomorrow," Jack said, eager to end the conversation. "How about Wednesday?" Jacqueline quickly offered, her tears drying up. Just as fast. "No, I've got plans Wednesday too," Jack replied. "What are you doing?" Jacqueline snapped. Jack told her a variation of what he had told Jill at work. "Taking a course at the university, you know, just picking up some knowledge," he said. It wasn't entirely untrue. He was learning, just not what Jacqueline thought. "What about Tuesday?" Jacqueline pushed. "Yeah, okay." Jack finally agreed, cutting the conversation short. At 10:30 on Monday morning, a girl named Lacey, from Side by Side Steakhouse, called to confirm his reservation for 2. "We look forward to seeing you, Mr. Herbert," she said, cheerfully. "Not as much as I'm looking forward to it," Jack joked, making Lacey laugh. Michelle laughed too, when Jack called to remind her of their date that night. "Like I'm thinking about anything else." Ending the call with a sweet "love you," Jack was surprised by how natural Michelle was with affection. Jacqueline hadn't said "love you" until they'd been together almost a year, and even then, it had been in response to his declaration. With Michelle, it felt easy, and she even called him sweet nicknames, something Jacqueline never did. The only time Jacqueline called him honey or baby was when she needed something. At 6:30 on Tuesday evening, Jack arrived at Michelle's house to pick her up for their date. He greeted Michelle's entire family, her parents, siblings, nieces, nephews, and her 2 little girls, Millie and Mandy. As usual, Millie was all smiles, and Mandy was right behind, giggling and asking if she could come too. Michelle came out in a dress that was a bit snug, but it hugged her in a way that made her look stunning. Jack could tell it was probably her nicest dress, likely bought before she had Amelia. "Damn, Bubbles, I need to go home and dress up," Jack joked, even though he was already wearing a sharp black pinstriped suit with a white shirt and a red tie. "What, you look great," Michelle replied, but her blush showed how flattered she was. "Yeah, but not as great as you," Jack said, making her blush even more. Michelle's parents noticed the exchange. "Why don't you say stuff like that to me?" Marie teased Barry. "Because I'd have to say it all the time," Barry laughed. "Look, I just said it again, you liar," Marie joked, giving him a playful kiss. Before they left, Michelle's brother Richard jokingly offered them a police escort. "I'll make sure you all get a police escort," he teased, making Michelle roll her eyes. "If you do, I'll punish you," she laughed, giving him a look. When they arrived at Side by Side Steakhouse, Michelle was visibly impressed. She'd never been anywhere this fancy before. Brian had never taken her anywhere fancier than Casa Ol, a local Mexican spot. "Wow," Michelle whispered, Looking around the elegant restaurant, the menu didn't show any prices, which made her even more nervous. "No prices, that's never good," she muttered. Jack leaned in and took her hand. "Don't worry, Bubbles. This just means you don't have to stress about what to order," he said, reassuringly. "Get whatever you want." She smiled, her tension easing. Her warm brown eyes sparkled as they sat together. "Whenever we're together, you'll always get what you want," Jack added, sincerely. Looking into his eyes, Michelle felt her heart skip a beat. She never thought anyone would speak to her like this. "I love you," she whispered, almost without thinking. And her eyes widened in surprise as the words slipped out. Jack smiled, his heart full of joy. "I'm so glad you said that, because I love you too." "Really?" Michelle gasped, clearly touched by his words. The dinner went perfectly. Jack's ribeye was cooked just right, juicy, tender, and packed with flavor. Michelle ordered the filet mignon, but only ate half of it as the portions were generous. They both agreed to save dessert for another time. "What a difference a day makes, huh?" Jill remarked, as Jack left the office on Wednesday. Wearing his usual jeans and shirt for dance class, "Huh?" Jack asked, raising an eyebrow. "Well, yesterday, you left here looking down, and today, you've got that Wednesday night smile on your face," Jill teased, clearly referencing his new routine. Jack smiled even wider and headed to the elevator, eager to get to Kay's dance school. He kept his weekend plans and the afterglow of his date with Michelle to himself. The night before, after dinner with Michelle, Jack kept his promise to visit Jacqueline's new apartment. She had rented a 2-bedroom in a decent complex. It was clean, with white walls and beige carpet, but lacked any sense of home. Jacqueline made her signature stuffed peppers and broccoli casserole, which were fine, but Jack found himself uninterested. As he bowed his head to bless the food, Jacqueline interrupted. "I'm not poisoning you, Jack. You don't have to pray," she teased. But Jack ignored her. It was something he always did, and she couldn't change that. During dinner, Jacqueline did what she always did: complaints. She grumbled about the rent, the cost of her furniture, her boring court worker, and noisy neighbors. Then, as expected, she brought up getting back together. "Did you hear me?" Jacqueline snapped, irritated. Jack took a final sip of his iced tea and faced her. "Why did you cheat on me?" he asked, bluntly, catching Jacqueline off guard. "What?" Jacqueline hissed, shocked by the sudden question. "What does that have to do with anything?" "It has everything to do with it," Jack replied, setting his napkin down. "You chose to be with Brian. I told you not to, told you I didn't agree with it, and warned it would ruin our marriage. But you did it anyway." Jacqueline shifted in her seat. "Yeah, I messed up," she admitted, weakly. "I didn't think. I know you didn't think I'd fight back, didn't think I'd leave, or get a divorce. You didn't think you wouldn't get your way," Jack sighed. Jacqueline's expression hardened. "You see, you're just as much to blame as I am." Jack shook his head sadly. "You've never apologized, Jacqueline. I've never heard you say I'm sorry. You haven't owned up to anything." "I am sorry," Jacqueline blurted, though it sounded more like a reflex than true regret. Jack stood up, done with the conversation. "You're not finished," Jacqueline started, but Jack cut her off. "Oh, I'm done," he said, firmly, heading for the door. "Don't call me again, we're done." After leaving Jacqueline's apartment, Jack stopped by Clark's for a chili cheeseburger and vanilla malt. The waitress noticed his tiny car and commented, "I'd be scared to drive that thing." "Yeah, but it gets 42 meters per gallon, Jack replied, with a grin, clearly enjoying the practicality of his smart car. Later that night, back at his apartment, Jack and Michelle texted each other until nearly 1 a.m. Their conversation was light and playful, and Michelle ended with a sweet, "Good night, Opie," followed by a kiss emoji. "Love you," she added. "Good night," Jack texted back. "Love you more, I know," she replied, playfully adding a tongue-out emoji. Jack chuckled, staring at the screen. Now it was Wednesday again, and Jack was looking forward to his dance class with Michelle. He stopped by Red's Sports Bar for his usual ham and cheese po' boy with olive dressing and hot sauce before heading to the studio. Michelle was already waiting, greeting him with her usual enthusiasm. "Hey, Bubbles," Jack smiled, admiring her outfit. "You look good," Michelle said, her eyes shining with excitement. "Yeah, but not as good as you," Jack replied, with a grin. As Kai called out the moves, they danced with increasing fluidity and confidence. Jack was no longer self-conscious, and Michelle's presence made it easier to relax and enjoy the music. By the end of the class, Jack felt bold enough to lean in and kiss Michelle softly. "This weekend, Brian has the kids," Michelle said, her voice soft and hesitant. "And what are you thinking?" Jack asked, curious. "I'm thinking about making love to you," Michelle purred, stepping closer. Jack's heart raced as he smiled. "That sounds good," he replied. Thursday morning, Jack woke up with a smile. The thought of the upcoming weekend with Michelle brightened his mood. But before that, he had a few things to take care of. One of those tasks was a conversation with Barry, Michelle's father. Jack wanted to make sure everything was clear between them, especially since he had planned a romantic weekend away with Michelle. That afternoon, Jack sat across from Barry, sipping coffee and talking about life. Barry was straightforward, but there was a warmth about him that Jack respected. "Look, I need to ask you something," Jack began, feeling the seriousness of his question. "Michelle told me her wedding with Brian was rushed. No honeymoon. It doesn't sit right with me. I want to give her something she never had, a proper romantic getaway." Barry raised an eyebrow, thoughtfully. "She never had much luck with that boy," Barry said. "Brian was never good enough for my daughter. But I kept quiet, because she seemed happy at first." He sighed, nodding. "Michelle deserves better, Jack. I can tell you care about her." "I do," Jack said, sincerely. "I want to do right by her." Barry took a sip of his coffee, studying Jack. "Just treat her right, that's all I ask." "You have my word," Jack promised, feeling a renewed sense of determination as they shook hands. The weekend arrived faster than Jack had expected. He had planned a surprise romantic getaway to New Orleans, a city full of charm and memories of his youth. On Friday afternoon, Jack left work early, excited to pick up Michelle and give her a break from all the stress she'd been carrying. It was time for her to be pampered. When Jack pulled up to Michelle's house, he was surprised to see Brian standing by his car, struggling with Millie and Mandy's car seats. Jack's stomach tightened. He knew Brian was Michelle's ex, and seeing him outside the house made him tense. "Let me help," Jack offered, stepping in quickly and gently taking Barry from Brian. "You handle Mandy." Brian looked uncomfortable. "Hi, Mr. AI," Millie greeted sweetly as she sat, buckled in. "You're not going to touch me, are you?" Brian asked, nervously, glancing at Jack. Jack chuckled. No, go ahead," he said, securing Barry's car seat. Brian looked relieved as he buckled Mandy in. Jack leaned over and kissed both girls on the forehead, making them giggle. "Got a minute? We need to talk," Jack said, turning to Brian. Brian tensed, but nodded. "What about Monday night?" "Monday night?" Jack asked, confused. "Yeah, I'm not doing anything Monday night," Brian replied, eager to sort things out. Jack and Michelle then loaded their bags into Jack's car and headed to New Orleans. The drive was about 2 hours, giving them time to ease into comfortable conversation. They talked about everything: life, their pasts, and hopes for the future. Michelle's laughter filled the car as she shared stories about her daughters and life with Brian. "I know I'm fat, but Brian always told me I was beautiful. Even when things were bad, he'd say I was pretty," she said, softly. Jack glanced over at her. "You're beautiful," he said, and Michelle smiled, her brown eyes softening as she reached over to squeeze his hand. Traffic in Baton Rouge was a typical mess, but Jack felt relieved when they reached Gonzales, a small town just outside New Orleans. The weekend promised something special. They checked into a charming boutique hotel near the French Quarter, and Jack had planned their first stop at Café du Monde for beignets and coffee. New Orleans had its own magic: the vibrant energy, the music spilling from bars, and the mouth-watering scent of food filled the air. Bourbon Street was a whole new world for Michelle, who hadn't traveled much outside of Dard, Louisiana. She held Jack's hand tightly as they strolled through the bustling streets. "Let's go back to the room," Michelle finally suggested, her voice soft with longing. They walked back to the hotel, Hand in hand, excitement building, Michelle chattered nervously, as they rode the creaky old elevator to their room. Jack opened the door, with the key card, and Michelle sat on the edge of the bed, looking up at him. "Bubbles, are you nervous?" Jack asked, gently, sitting beside her. "No," Michelle replied, quickly, though her nod said otherwise. "I'm all fat," she added, in a small voice. Jack turned to her, full of affection. "And you're all beautiful too," he said, firmly. She didn't argue about her size. She knew she was overweight, and pretending otherwise would have felt insincere. But Jack told her the truth. "You're beautiful," he repeated, and he meant it. To him she really was. On Monday night, Brian sat nervously, across from Jack, at Jitter Coffee Shop. Jack ordered his usual coffee, with evaporated milk, and watched Brian fidget. "Hey, Brian, how's it going?" Jack asked, as he sat down opposite him. Good, I'm fine. How are you?" Brian stammered. "Yeah, I'm good. Got black bean soup, simmering at home," Jack replied, taking a sip of his coffee. Brian looked confused. "So what do you want to talk about?" he asked, trying to get to the point. Jack leaned forward, his gaze steady. "Why does my wife want to cheat on me?" he asked, bluntly, catching Brian off guard. Brian's eyes widened. He had run through different scenarios in his head, but Jack's directness caught him by surprise. Jack sipped his coffee, and set the cup aside. "I gave her everything she wanted. The house, the car. She had a great Lincoln, but she had to have that Mercedes-Benz. I gave her everything, Brian," Jack said, his frustration clear. Brian shifted uncomfortably. "She's getting older," he finally replied. "Dedry's off at college, and Jacqueline feels unwanted." Jack listened, nodding slowly. "So all it takes is a little attention from someone younger?" he asked, still in disbelief. "Sometimes, yeah, from you, it's just noise, but from someone else, it feels different," Brian admitted. Jack's jaw tightened. He forced a thin smile, said good night, and left. Back at his apartment, Jack ate black bean soup with extra hot sauce, and exchanged messages with Michelle. By Tuesday morning, he woke up with clarity. Jacqueline's affair wasn't his fault. It stemmed from her insecurities. For the first time, Jack didn't feel like a failure. He realized he had done everything he could for their marriage. And her betrayal was on her. Feeling lighter, Jack understood that his small apartment was no longer enough. He wanted more of space, for him, Michelle, and maybe even her girls. The thought of moving forward wasn't daunting anymore, it was exciting. That evening, it was time for another dance class, but this one felt different. Jack had something important planned, something he had been thinking about for weeks. After all the time they had spent together, in everything they had shared, Jack knew what he wanted. He wanted to build a life with Michelle. As he arrived at the dance studio, a familiar excitement filled him. Michelle was already waiting, her eyes lighting up. As he approached, she greeted him with her usual bubbly energy. "Hey, Bubbles," Jack said, warmly. "Hi Jack." She beamed, ready for some more dancing. Jack smiled, more than ready. They stepped onto the dance floor, joining the other couples. After months of dancing together, each lesson had deepened their connection. Their movements were more synchronized, not just in the dance, but in how they felt together. The instructor called out the steps, offering encouragement and praise, but Jack wasn't just focused on the dance. His attention was on Michelle, her laughter, her smile, the way she moved with him. It all filled him with a sense of calm. As the music began to fade, Jack knew it was time. He had rehearsed this moment many times in his mind. But now that it was here, his heart raced. As Michelle spun beside him, Jack suddenly dropped to one knee, in the middle of the dance floor. Michelle stopped, momentarily confused, and turned to look at him. The other couples noticed, turning their attention to them, as the music faded. "Michelle," Jack began, his voice strong. Despite his nerves, "I love you with all my heart." He reached into his pocket, and pulled out a small velvet box, revealing a stunning yellow gold ring, with a 1-carat diamond. Surrounded by 4 smaller diamonds, "Will you marry me?" Michelle's eyes widened, and as she looked at the ring, then back at Jack. For a second, the whole studio was silent. Then suddenly, she let out a joyful scream, and tackled Jack to the floor. Throwing her arms around him, and kissing him excitedly, "Oh Archie," she exclaimed, between kisses, laughing with joy. The other couples erupted into applause and laughter as Michelle nearly knocked Jack over in her enthusiasm. Kai, watching from the sidelines, joined in the laughter. "That's a yes, I take it," Kai called out, amused. Michelle finally got off Jack, her face flushed with excitement and a little embarrassment. She grabbed the ring and held it up. Marveling at the diamond, sparkling in the studio's soft light. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you," she shouted, filled with happiness. Jack grinned as he stood up, dusting off his pants. They embraced again, and Michelle kissed him once more. Before gazing at the ring on her finger with awe, the days following the proposal were a whirlwind of excitement. Jack called his son JJ to share the news. "Is it really Dad?" JJ teased over the phone. "My stepmom's younger than me now." Jack chuckled at his son's playful tone. "Yeah, I guess she is." Not far behind was his daughter Dedri, who joined in the teasing. "Looks like I'm not the baby of the family anymore," she joked, pretending to be upset. But Michelle's eldest daughter Millie was quick to reassure Dedri that being a big sister was actually pretty great. "It's awesome, you get to stay up 15 more minutes than the little ones." The family gathered at Jack's new house for a celebratory dinner, and the topic of Jack's nickname, Mr. AI, came up. Percy, Jack's youngest, turned to his father, confused. "Why do they call you that?" "It started when I first met Michelle," Jack explained, with a laugh. "I called her Bubbles. And I guess the girls thought it was funny, so they made something up for me." "Bubbles," Elisa, Percy's wife, asked, trying not to laugh. "I don't know," Jack shrugged. "She's just so full of energy, and it sort of came out." Michelle, smiling, reached over to hold Jack's hand, "And I found out his middle name is Archibald," she added, grinning. "So, naturally, the girls started calling him Mr. AI, and he's a big Saints fan," Penelope chimed in, knowingly. "Archie, fan of course," as Millie and Mandy took their new siblings outside to show them where the pool would be dug. Dedri lingered next to her father, leaning in to speak quietly. "Daddy, I might have let it slip to Mom that you and Michelle are getting married next Saturday," she admitted, sheepishly. Jack sighed, but smiled. "Sweetie, it's okay, I wasn't keeping it a secret from her." Dedri nodded, looking relieved. "She's a little upset, though," she added, cautiously. Jack shrugged, unsurprised. "That's her problem," he said, calmly, as he watched his family spread out across the yard. Laughing and playing with the kids, Jack couldn't help but feel grateful. Everything had come together in ways he hadn't expected. Standing there, holding Michelle's hand, he knew this was the start of a new chapter, one full of love, happiness, and peace.